Hello, beautiful people of the internet. How are you doing today? My name is Jackie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today in this video, I am going to be reviewing all of the books that I read in the month of March 2022. In the month of March, I read 6 books for a total of 1,705 pages. So while I did read more books than I did the month before, a lot of the books I read were on the shorter side, and my average star rating for the month was 3.33, a bit of a mixed bag of books this month, so let's get into it. The first book I read in March was the pick for my real life book club, which was When the Emperor Was Divine by Julie Otsuka. I gave this 3 stars. There were things that I liked about this book and I understood what the author was trying to do. I think I personally just wanted a little more from it. This is a very short book. It's less than 200 pages and it's a work of historical fiction that takes place during World War II, and it follows this Japanese-American family who are sent to an internment camp during the war. Basically, in case you don't know, during World War II, Japanese Americans who were American citizens had their rights taken away and they were sent to live in these camps far away from their homes because the war stirred up a lot of anti-Japanese racism, and basically these people were taken away from their homes and placed in these camps because there was a fear that they were somehow disloyal to the country. So this book is about this huge atrocity in American history, and it follows this nameless Japanese-American family. There's the mother, the 2 children, and the father at the beginning of the book has already been taken away to be questioned by authorities, believing that he is a traitor to the country. And we never find out the names of any of this family, and I think while I understood why the author did that, I wanted to get to know them a little more. I think the author kept the family nameless because she wanted to represent that there were so many families that this happened to, and so she wanted it to be more universal. I think, though, that I, as a reader, would have preferred to get to know the family a little better. Sorry if the camera angle drastically changed. My phone just fell off the tripod, so I had to put it back on. But anyways, there weren't any major issues I had with this book. I just think I wanted more from it, and I think another reason why that is because the book was so short. There are pros and cons to writing really short books. The good thing is, they might be easier for people to read, easier for them to pick up. They're not as daunted by the size. But when you write a book that's really short, there's also less page time to develop a storyline and characters and get your message across. So while I appreciated this book, let's say, I just was left wanting a little bit more. Then I read In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. This is a super hyped thriller, and I was excited to finally read it. I did like this overall, but I didn't love it as much as some other people did. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I did post a weekend reading vlog where I read this entire book. It includes both non-spoiler and spoiler sections, so I will link that video in the card. Go watch that for more of my specific thoughts about this book as I was reading. I will say my biggest issue with this book, and what caused me to struggle with it a lot at the beginning, was I felt like some of the dialogue was so bad. There were some times when I was reading this book and I just cringed and had to take a moment before I could keep going because the dialogue was giving me Lifetime movie. It was so melodramatic and not how people in real life actually speak, at least not anyone that I've ever met. However, once we got deeper into the story, I was more invested. This is a mystery thriller that follows Jessica as she goes back to the university she attended and reunites with some of her old friends and classmates for the first time in many years. Years ago, back when they were at school, Jessica's friend Heather was murdered, and one of the group was accused of the crime, though is that person the real murderer? Jessica is an interesting main character because she is ruthless, selfish, cunning, willing to do what it takes to get what she wants, but there are also things that have happened to her in her past that make you sympathize with her as well. So while I wouldn't say say she's exactly a good person. She was an interesting character. I did predict who the murderer was. I narrowed it down to 2 people, and there was one that I thought was more likely to be the killer than the other, and that was who the killer ended up being. However, I did not know why that person killed Heather, and so when that was finally revealed, I enjoyed seeing everything come together. And what I really appreciated were that there were details that had been mentioned earlier in the book, which I kind of forgot about as I was reading, that then became relevant to the overall resolution, and so that was really satisfying. I actually enjoyed the romantic plotline in this book as well. Jessica and her love interest are both, let's say, morally gray people, and though I don't know if I would say I liked them, I kind of liked them together. It was very much a you two deserve each other kind of thing. And there was also a micro twist at the very end of the book that I did not see coming, so that was fun as well. Go watch that vlog if you want to see more thoughts and some spoilers for those of you who read the book. Next, I read Murder on the Links by Agatha Christie, which I gave 4 stars. In retrospect, maybe it should have been rated lower because I'm already forgetting parts of the plot. However, while I was actually reading this book, I was having a really good time. Murder on the Links is one of the Poirot mysteries, and it follows Poirot and his friend Hastings as they travel to France to investigate a murder on a golf course. Basically, this man tells Poirot, "I need your help," and then when Poirot shows up at the house, his client is already dead. Maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but I actually really enjoy Hastings' narration. I have good laughs at his expense. Hastings only appears in a few Poirot books. Apparently, when Agatha Christie started writing Poirot, she wanted Poirot to have a sidekick, sort of like the Watson to his Holmes, but then Hastings sort of was phased out a few books in, and Hastings is not as bright as he thinks he is. He gives himself a little too much credit, but that's why I like him, because he makes me laugh. Honestly, I can't remember now if I predicted whodunit or not. I think part of the reason why I enjoyed this book so much is I went in with no expectations. In the past, when I've read some of Agatha Christie's most popular books, I think I really didn't enjoy them that much because I think they were hyped so much that they just didn't wow me like I was expecting. So I think the fact that I went into this book with no preconceived notions, not expecting anything, that helped me enjoy it more. Overall, I enjoyed this, and I'm excited to keep reading more Agatha Christie books in the near future. Oh boy, so the next book I read in March was Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. I was excited to read this because I enjoy a good book inspired by a Greek mythology. However, this one was a massive disappointment, and I ended up giving it 2 stars out of 5. Yeah, would not recommend. This book is advertised as being a feminist retelling of the myth of Ariadne in the vein of Madeline Miller's Circe, and I take an issue with pretty much every aspect of that description because I do not think this is a retelling. I think it is a straightforward telling of the myth just from Ariadne's perspective, but it doesn't bring anything new, innovative, or interesting to the table. At times, I wasn't even entirely convinced that this book was feminist, and comparing this to Circe, my God, they do not compare. Circe is leagues ahead of this one. Circe, sweetie. I'm so sorry anyone would ever say that. Like,
so sorry. I'm so sorry that an ugly ass bitch like this would even say that.
There was one thing about this book that I did really appreciate, so I will give it props for this first. In this book, we follow Ariadne, but we also follow the perspective of her sister, Phaedra. And I like how in this book, Ariadne and Phaedra both had very different reactions to motherhood. Ariadne is someone who is very maternal. She loves her children, and being a mother is the happiest that she ever is in her life, and that's totally cool. I think if there are people who being a mother is really important to them and that's their ambition, that's what they want out of their lives, that's great. Now, we also have Phaedra, and Phaedra is stuck in a marriage that she really didn't want, and she resents her husband. So when she finds out that she's pregnant, I was totally expecting a cliche turn like you often see in fantasy and historical fictions, where the woman, she hates her marriage, but having a baby suddenly makes her life so much more bearable. Oh my God, her child is such an amazing gift, blah, blah, blah. And that's all well and good, but I don't think that's that realistic. So I was actually interested when we see that Phaedra doesn't take to motherhood. She cannot bond with her children, and she still resents her husband, and she also resents her children because they're the product of a union that she didn't want. And so I thought that was really fascinating. Motherhood isn't a magic cure-all. Not everybody is meant to be a mother, and it's not like having a baby is going to solve all your life's problems. So I appreciate that Jennifer Saint took this different route, because I was totally expecting it to be a cliche, babies fix everything plotline, and I felt like this was much more interesting and realistic. But aside from that, the rest of this book was pretty terrible. I thought Ariadne was a pretty flat character. She really undergoes no character development throughout the book, and I was really kind of apathetic towards her. Like, she was fine, I guess, but did I care about her? Not really. There were times where I felt like the book was kind of info dumping on you, just recounting the entirety of a Greek myth, just in case you, the reader, don't know the story. And if you were going to read this book hoping for any feminist twist on the original story or any semblance of hope, you're not gonna find it here. This book can basically be summarized as women good, men bad. Women suffer because men bad. That's it. There's no depth to any of this. The ending also made me feel genuine rage. I was thinking I would give it a 3-star before I got to the ending, and I knew I had to lower it to a 2 because this ending made me want to throw things. It's a terrible ending, and there actually is a version of Ariadne's myth in the actual Greek canon that has a more feminist and interesting ending than this book. It was rage-inducing. I also am flabbergasted that this author is apparently writing a book about Hera, because Hera doesn't actually have any lines in this book. However, almost every single time she's mentioned, she's referred to as jealous Hera. Listen, if you want to write a feminist Greek myth retelling, I think you can make a more complex and interesting depiction of Hera, because have you ever considered that Hera never wanted to marry Zeus? She was forced into it against her will, and the one time that she stood up against Zeus, he had her tortured. So if you wanted to, actually display some complex and critical thinking, you could view Hera as a woman trapped in awful circumstances in a marriage where her husband is a bastard, and so since she can't fight back against him, she directs her anger towards the women that her husband has been unfaithful with. And yes, that's not really good for, I don't know, how to phrase that. Obviously, it's not good for Hera to express her wrath against these innocent mortal women, but I think there could be a more complex depiction of her other than just, yeah, she's really jealous. What a bitch. I mean, Zeus is literally a serial rapist, and this book does not have any censuring words for him. Oh, this book made me so angry, honestly. It was really bad. It was really bad. I would not recommend it. Do not read this book. So, okay, now that rant's over, got that off my chest. All right, the next book that I read was The Lady Queen, The Notorious Reign of Joanna I, Queen of Naples, Jerusalem, and Sicily by Nancy Goldstone. I gave this 4 stars. I had to close the door because there is a lawnmower outside. This video is going off the rails, but overall, I really enjoyed this. This is about Joanna I, who was the queen regnant of Naples, Jerusalem, and Sicily. Though really Naples is where she actually held her authority. Basically, at this point in time, the rulers of Naples also claimed to be the rulers of Sicily. I believe that the term Kingdom of Naples wasn't used. They said their kingdom was Sicily, and then there were also rulers in what we now call Sicily who said they were the rightful kings of Sicily. And so eventually, when the two titles later joined up together, centuries later, it was referred to as the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, because they both claimed that they were the real Sicily. Joanna was a very interesting woman. She was a woman fighting to maintain her power in a time when we didn't have a lot of women rulers. She also had 4 husbands, one of whom, Andrew of Hungary, was murdered, and she was accused of being part of the conspiracy to kill Andrew. Then eventually Joanna herself was murdered. If you're someone who's really into like Game of Thrones, those different warring factions, power struggles, sex, intrigue, and you're looking for a nonfiction book to read, I think this might be a good one. There are so many different groups in this book, all fighting for the throne, all fighting to get more power for themselves. I actually had to draw out a little family tree so that I could keep everybody straight in my head while reading. Can you see it? This was just for my own peace of mind while I was reading. And it's also confusing because some of these people on this family tree married each other. Yeah, good old cousin incest. That was sarcasm. Do not marry your cousins. It's not good for your genetics. So on that note, the last book that I read in the month of March was The Sanatorium by Sarah Pierce. I gave this one 3 stars, considering it's received largely negative reviews. I didn't absolutely hate it, but it wasn't exactly good either. This is the first in a series, and I will not be continuing with the books. I didn't enjoy this first one enough that I feel like it's worth it to keep reading the series. Our main character in this book is Ellen Warner, and she is an English police officer, and she's been taking a break from her life as a detective because she's still struggling after something that previously happened to her at work. Also, when she was young, one of her brothers died, and it's something that she still struggles with to this day. She and her boyfriend go to this mountain resort in Switzerland because her other brother is getting married. However, when they go to this resort, her brother's fiance goes missing and they don't know what happened to her. This resort has also been surrounded in controversy because before it was revitalized as a hotel, it had once been a sanitarium. Maybe you would like this book if you liked something like One by One by Ruth Ware. They both have a very similar setting in this ski resort and kind of similar vibes. This book wasn't bad necessarily. However, I was kind of bored throughout parts of it, and considering this is supposed to be a mystery, it is on the longer side for that genre, and I think it showed. There were good chunks of this book though where I was waiting for something exciting to happen. I just feel like this book was a little too long, and so I was kind of, there were parts where I was engaged and other parts where I was just like, okay, let's get to something here. I'm starting to lose interest. The characters were fine. I didn't hate them, but I didn't really like them either. They were just whatever. And then when we got to the final reveal of who the big bad was, the ending used some of my least favorite thriller tropes. I won't say what exactly happened, obviously, because that's a spoiler, but I will link my Goodreads review where I have a spoiler that you can click on if you want to know. I just think some of the tropes they used here, I think, are a bit sexist and tired. Make of that what you will. Overall, I think this book wasn't as terrible as I feared it might be given the low rating, but it was just pretty average. So those are all the books that I read in the month of March. Have you read any of these books? If so, do let me know your thoughts in a comment down below. Would really like to hear your opinions. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. I post new videos every single Wednesday. My social media links are down below if you want to follow me on Tumblr, Instagram, or be my friend on Goodreads. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an energizing rest of your day. Bye, and I'll see you next time.